Hi guys, my name is Annie. I'm a tech consultant based in Stockholm. I work for asset management and private equity companies, and I spend a lot of time with finance people. I see people spending half of their days in Excel sheets. That is why in this tutorial, I will show you how to use CLAUDE in Excel to automate most common cases for finance in Excel. Let's get started. For this tutorial, I created a worksheet that is very close to an actual worksheet. However, the data is synthetic data and is not taken from any client. So here we will work with a company called Nordcomp AB. This is a fictive company. It is mid-sized Nordic distributor. It has 240 employees and it has 310 million annual revenue. It is based in Sweden, Norway, Denmark, and Finland, and we will take the role of finance manager. So first we will look into T&E tab. Here we can see all the travel related expenses, and in the company we have a policy that all of those expenses need to be 8% of total operational expenses. If I didn't use CLAUDE, I will then create a helper row with some if function. However, let's try to use CLAUDE and see how quick the same job can be done. In order to use CLAUDE in Excel, we will click on Start and then CLAUDE will pop up in here. And let's click on the CLAUDE. You can see that we need to log in for the first time. And we need to have at least pro account in CLAUDE in order to use CLAUDE in Excel. Now you can see that a chat pops up in here and we can start to ask questions. So one thing to remember is that CLAUDE in this chat has access to all the tabs that we have in our worksheet, and also it has access to all the formulas. So if we go to the README tab, here we have our first prompt that we want to ask, and it says our policy says travel, hotel, and meal together must stay under 8% of total costs on the sheet. Are we compliant? Which department is the biggest driver? So we will just copy this prompt that I prepared and we will go to the tab. It is very important to go to the right tab. CLAUDE tab is referencing the current tab, and we are referencing current tab in our prompt. And now we will click on enter button and CLAUDE will start to read the data on this tab and then do the analysis. Here we can see the thinking process. We have an answer. It took CLAUDE less than a minute to provide this answer. We can see that CLAUDE added new information in the same tab. Now we are looking into T&E policy compliance check. We have policy limit percentage of total costs on sheet. And this is equal to 8, as we said in our README section. I will try to minimize this so we can read the information easily. So here you can see that we have the policy limit percentage of total cost then we have total cost on the sheet, which is then coming from the same sheet. Here is the number. And then underneath that, we have T&E spend, travel, hotel, meals. So this is combination of all those values in this Excel tab, which is 58,155. And then it calculated T&E as percentage of total. So we have 40% instead of 8%. We basically spend around 42,000 over the budget. And is it compliant? The answer is no. And then underneath that, we have the cost spent by department. We can see how much sales, management, operations, and finance department used. So we can then go back to different departments and try to see how they need to minimize their travel. Now let's go to the next user case. In the next step, we will look into monthly P&L. All the people that work with accounting or finance, they know exactly what P&L is, and they will definitely know which type of issues comes up in P&L every single month. So right now, if we go to our P&L sheet, we can see that we have some formulas that are not working, and we need to try to resolve those formulas. And this is a repetitive work because we will work with P&L every single month. If we go to README, here is the prompt that I prepared, which says there are errors in P&L. Find every broken cell, explain what causes each one, and tell me exactly what to fix. Let's copy this text and go back to P&L tab. And here we will pass the next prompt that says, there are errors in P&L. Find every broken cell, explain what causes each one, and tell me exactly what to fix. So now it will start to look into this tab and try to understand why we have those 3 errors, and it will try to help us to fix those issues. Here we have an answer, and answer is that those two formulas aren't working because those are divided to 0, which you can't do in mathematics. And then when it comes to this one, Claude basically says that the reason that this doesn't work is because the reference column is taken away. So here we can read all the information a lot more careful in real life situation, and then we can either ask Claude how should we fix this, and we can fix it on our own so we understand what exactly was changed. And this is how I would recommend you to do in real life situation, that you understand what needs to be changed and change it on your own. Or you can even ask Claude to fix it. In this case, you can ask Claude to fix it because this is not an actual production environment. Please fix all the errors. Great. As you can see, Claude fixed the issues, and I will strongly recommend to verify afterwards that everything looks great. Now, let's go to the next step. In the next step, we will look into legacy allocation. So we have one tab in here that is called legacy allocation. This one was built by one colleague that left a couple of years ago, and he even said that we shouldn't touch the formulas. However, because we inherited this Excel worksheet, we need to understand the formulas. And if we click under allocated cost here for per department, we can see that those are big formulas. In general, this worksheet is showing us how much money is allocated per department in Sweden, Norway, Denmark, and Finland. And we can see that HR and facility departments are sharing their costs across the countries. And just for this example, we need to understand those formulas because those are big formulas. And if we aren't an Excel pro, then we might not understand what exactly the formula does. That is why let's go to our README section. Let's try to copy the prompt that I prepared for this example, and we will pass the prompt in the chat once we go to the correct tab. That is very important to go to the correct tab because chat is referencing the tab that is opened while we are talking to the chat. So here we say the person who built this allocation left the company. Explain how the formula in column E works step by step and whether the allocation logic is sound. If we have an answer, it took less than a minute, and Claude explains that the logic is sound and also explains all the formulas and the numbers are. Now let's go to the next demo. In the next step, we will look into raw GL export from ERP system. This is our prompt. Let's copy the prompt and then let's go and look into our GL export. So what is happening in here is that we exported GL account data from our ERP system. So we can see the balance for each account. Departments are not consistent. We have, for example, finance, all capital letters. Then we have finance that is shortcut, and we have finance that only the first letter is capital. Then apart from that, when we look into amounts, you can see that all the minus amounts are in the braces, which is not optimal because we can't use this format when we do calculations in Excel. So we need to do a real cleanup in here, and it can be even so that we have duplicates. If we do this one by one, row by row, this can easily take a day or half a day. So let's try to use Claude first to clean up this data and then to run some formulas on it. We will say clean the GL export, standardize all booking days to this specific format. And then we will say fix amount stored as text and negative in parentheses, standardize department names, remove exact duplicates, then create a summary sheet of spend by month and account. So again, this is something that you will probably do every single month, and it will take a day or two. And now let's try to delegate this job to Claude, use the advantage of living in AI era and see how quick the same job can be done. And do not understand me wrong. My philosophy is delegate the job to Claude. However, follow all the job that Claude is doing. Try to understand how it is thinking and make sure that you understand both the process and also verify the results. Claude created 5 different steps that it will run. First, it will create sheets. Next, it will build date format and department mapping tables. After that, it will build clean GL rows with audit formulas. Next, it will build spend by month and account summary. And after that, it will build verify, parsing, totals, and duplicate removal. Now we can just lean back, try to relax, and during this process, we can follow what Claude is doing, because one thing that is great about Claude is that it is writing down everything it does. we have an answer. 2 new sheets were created and I left raw GL export untouched as the source of the records. Great. Let's go to the first sheet that is called GL clean. Here you can see that for booking date, it has the source. It has the detected format that we asked for. Then we have month, we have account, we have department. Here as well, we have the raw department. Then we have the fixed department. And then we have text, amounts. So this tab looks fine. In production, you can read in detail and understand and verify that everything looks good. Next, we will go to GL summary. This is the summary that we asked Cloud to create. And in here, we can see that it's summarized accounts. We have just 1 row per account and we have the total for that account. Amazing. Now let's go to the next user case, which is cash history. We have 1 tab where we have all the cash history. If we go to in README, here we see that we have 34 months of revenue and cash, and CFO wants a 2026 forecast. This is another very common user case that happens if you are a financial analyst, controller, accountant, or financial manager. So let's go to cash history, and instead of doing this work on our own as you used to do and spending a couple of days on this, let's ask Cloud to do the job. So we will ask, based on cash history, build a monthly 2026 revenue and cash forecast on the forecast sheet. Put the growth and seasonality assumptions on the assumption sheet so I can adjust them. Note that July is a factory shutdown month. So here it is very important to remember that in Nordic countries, July is normally the holiday month, which means that we don't have a lot of cash flows coming in July. That is one thing that we can put on our assumption tab before we create the forecast. Now we can see that Cloud is deciding on how to clean the seasonality factor. And the same thing in here, we will read all the process, try to understand what Cloud is doing. And if there is something that you know better, because you as a person with domain knowledge will know some specifics better than Cloud, you can always instruct Cloud. So do not take the response or the answer that Cloud is giving without checking it. Just think with Cloud, use Cloud as a thinking partner and instruct Cloud when there is the need. You can see that when it comes to permissions, I'm using accept all edit. However, in production environment, I would recommend that you use ask before edit. So you follow the process and you directly review every single edit before it is done to your worksheet. And also for safety reason, if you just have one worksheet and if it is saved locally in your computer, then I will recommend to do a copy of that worksheet and work in the copy. If something was updated by Cloud that you didn't want to update, you always have the source saved somewhere. So now we have a result. Cloud says built and verified 2 sheets, all live formula. So we have the assumption sheet that we asked for. Here we have all the assumptions, and then we have our input on the same assumption folder that you can change. It is between B15 and B18. So those ones are our input that we can easily change, and the numbers will change if we do this as well. And then we also have seasonality that is between D4 and G15. So this is the seasonality table. And then we have a separate sheet for forecast. So it was created in here. If we scroll, we can see all the forecast. And this is something that will normally take us a couple of days to create. And one job that is remaining is reading through all the work process and trying to understand all the numbers. Okay, let's go to the next demo. So for the next demo, we will see that board asked us for an indicative DCF valuation. So this is another task that will normally take us a lot of time to do. So let's try to delegate this to Cloud. We will copy the prompt and we will go to the right tab. That is this one. So here you can see that we have all the numbers for 5 years. However, board want us to create an individual DCF on separate DCF sheet. So we will send this prompt to Cloud, then we will give some time to Cloud to create DCF model based on historical financials and assumptions that we created in the previous step. Great, we have a result. It says built on DCF and all drivers are on assumptions. Let's go to DCF and see. Here we have our default cash flow model that we can present for the board. Amazing. Again, what you will do at this stage, you will read the thinking process, how CLAUDE actually calculated all of those numbers, and you will verify before showing this to board. And in the next step, we will ask CLAUDE to create a bar chart of revenue by region. So as you know, most of the times when you are doing your presentations for the board, you will not show the worksheet. Instead, you will need to create some type of presentation and get some numbers and visuals from your worksheet. So let's try to ask CLAUDE to create those visuals for us and see how successful CLAUDE is. We have a response, and let's try to go and check how the revenue mix looks. We have a response. Let's go and check how the revenue tab looks, and this is it. We even have all the visualization, so we can just copy this visualization from our Excel worksheet and present in our presentation. So those were all the